So hello and welcome to my show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. I'm going to talk about last week's show. And we're going to put up a picture here and share this with everybody. So last week's show was with Tracy O'Hara. Tracy was last week's show, and the show is called Radical Awakening, a new kind of awakening, where she talked about healing from narcissistic abuse. Tracy works with an organization. She works with a technique called Reset It. Tracy O'Hara, Reset It. Reset the things that don't belong to you in just 2 sessions. Check out her show from last week. Tracy can be reached at tracy@reset.ca. Tracy, TRACEY at RESET-IT.ca. Or you can reach her by phone at 908-721-6597. Again, check out Tracy's show. And now on to today's show. So today's show is, let me find my notes here. So the information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. My name is Tina Huggins, your divorce coach specialist, divorce consultant, and restorative family mediator. And we are joined today by the beautiful Jill Kaufman. And today's show is a better way to divorce a narcissist. And Jill is a licensed therapist, divorce coach, mediator, and co-parenting expert. After going through her own difficult divorce, Jill made it her life's mission to help others not have to go through it so tough. She is the author of the book and the online course, I'm Getting Divorced, Now What? And the transformative group program, Thriving Through Divorce. Jill also offers one-on-one and group coaching for parents going through divorce so they can protect their children and finances and successfully get to an agreement without litigation, even when divorcing a difficult person. So that would be amazing for people. And I don't think people really understand that either, Jill, is that they all think, let's just go hire a lawyer and we'll just get divorced. Well, the lawyer just keeps taking all kinds of money. And so if we have to go into litigation, it's even way more money. So I appreciate the fact that you're here with us today to talk about this, Jill. So can you kind of
Thank you so much
Yes.
for having me.
Thank you. And can you tell us how we can divorce a high conflict narcissistic person without going through litigation?
Yes. Well, I'd say most of the time you can do that without going through litigation. And you can do that by knowing how to communicate so that you don't get caught up in the conflict, because a lot of times the narcissist or the high conflict person wants to be in conflict. And so they're going to say and do things to trigger their partner, their former partner, and they're going to try to take control of the process. They're going to say and do things that really are not good for children and not good for families. And what happens is we react, they react, and you're going through a very high conflict situation. So one of the things that you said is like, what can you do? One of the things that people do that gets them into trouble is letting their lawyers control the process. And lawyers don't understand mental health issues. They don't understand narcissism, high conflict personalities. So they're telling you, you're entitled to this. We're going to fight for this. And that's not always the best course of action. You have to take a whole bunch of issues into consideration, and your mental health and your children's mental health is also one of those issues that's really, really important. So you have to weigh how important things are to you versus how much you know this other person will or will not be open to it. So, and what the impact is on everybody's mental health. And attorneys won't think about that. Most attorneys, I won't say all attorneys, because there are really great attorneys who understand that piece of it, but for the most part, they're not really thinking about that. So you need somebody to help you think it through in that way, where you're really considering all the impacts of the divorce.
Yeah, and I never think that it's wise to put all your money in just go pay the lawyer and just give the lawyer everything. And so I have to remind my clients that that lawyer needs to be reminded occasionally that he's working for you, not the other way around. And
Right.
so I tell my people all the time, that when it's time to hire an attorney, you have to know what type of attorney you're going to hire for your situation. And our clients most of the time need a litigation lawyer. And what that does, just like you kind of pointed out here, is that litigation lawyer will start saying, we're going to fight. The word fight means more money in their pocket. So we want to stay away from the fight. And that's the part that's so hard, especially with our clients who come to us and they've been emotionally beat up for however long, and now they're starting to stand on their own feet and they're stomping their feet. Now they look like the bad guy in front of the judge.
Right, exactly. And believe it or not, there are ways to communicate with these high conflict people that lowers the conflict. So, you can you can react to the person and tell them, and stamp your feet and say, this is what I want. But when you're doing that, that's going to create more conflict. So, I'm sure you use Bill Eddy's techniques, right? The Biff method. And
Yep.
and you want to be friendly when you're interacting with them, which goes against everything that you feel like doing. You feel like screaming, and you feel like telling them you can't control me anymore, and you feel like saying you're being unreasonable, or you're, no way am I going to agree to that. They say things like, you're never going to get get money from me, or I'm never going to pay alimony, or you're not going to get to see the kids, or, they'll say all these things, or you're not going to get the house. They'll say all these things to you, and you're, tempted to say, you can't tell me what to do anymore. And, and then you're off to the races, and, you're in a higher conflict, and you're not going to get what you want when you go through divorce. So be friendlier. I know this is so hard. I get my clients send me emails. They're going to send their soon-to-be exes, their high conflict ex-partners, and they're like, oh, it doesn't have anything provoking in there. And I'm like, actually, it does, because you're not objective, right? And you don't understand how the other person is going to perceive this. And you really have to be friendly and say, thank you so much for agreeing to talk, the other day. I really appreciate how good a parent you're being when you're taking Sally to her gymnastics class. I just need you to let me know when you're going to be 15 minutes late. And you know what I mean? Like that, you have to say it in a way. And I know this doesn't feel good when people try to do this, but when they see the change in the response from the high conflict partner, they realize it's really worth it. And so it's just important to get yourself out of the emotion and think logically, what is the best way to communicate with these people, to strategically negotiate with a high conflict person.
Yes. And as you're talking, I have multiple scenes that come up, going back to the Biff aspect. So Biff is brief, informative, friendly, and factual. So, and if you can, that friendly part, just like Jill just said, that friendly part is huge and important, because if we are rude in our comments, well, that just agitates the other side. And now we're drawn out, possibly dollar-wise, because now lawyers might have to get involved. And so often that's what I see from my side is that if they can just biff it, if they can give those kinds of comments, or sometimes it's the gray rock method, you just don't respond to the rude comments, and I will tell my clients a lot. I'm like, so what you're getting ready to tell them is most likely going to agitate them, even though it's biff. And so they're going to fire off some mean little statements. You got to just not take it personal. This doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with their feelings, their fear, and their hurt in a lot of cases.
Exactly. And it's very hard to do that when you've been married to someone for a long period of time. You're used to being mistreated, and you really don't want to let it go anymore,
Right.
But you have to do it because it's it's strategically. Sorry, my dog's reacting to something outside.
Good.
You have to be logical, and you have to think through what the best way to respond, as opposed to do it emotionally.
Yes, and that's the thing, and I'm sure you do the same stuff by the sounds of the email. So I have my clients send me their text or send me the emails before they're going to send them, not just to their soon-to-be ex, but to their attorneys too, because I'm like, there's a lot of stuff in here your attorney doesn't need to know or want to know. And that's just going to cost you much more money to pay the attorney to read stuff that they don't really care, aren't going to do anything with anyway. So I have them send my stuff. We clean out the emotion and the extra junk, and then they send it on to the lawyer or to their soon-to-be ex.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I do too. I help them kind of organize their thoughts before they send lawyers anything, because every little thing that you send your lawyer or you talk to your lawyer, you have to pay to do. So there's no reason to waste the money on things that the lawyers don't need to know about or to be involved with, or, the more you can do without them, the better.
Yes. So there is some stuff in your background that is different than my background. So my background comes from law enforcement, and your background actually comes from therapy. So earlier, when you were talking about the mental health issues, you actually understand those in a different light.
Absolutely. So people think that, if somebody was, treated them poorly, they can argue or convince the person to be different. They can convince them that maybe, now they're going to start being respectful to me because we're not going to be married anymore. And that makes sense that we're got to co-parent together for a long period of time, and they're going to treat me more respectfully. Well, if the person has a personality disorder like narcissism or borderline, there's like 6 or 7 personality disorders. If they have a personality disorder, there's no treatment for that. It is very rare that people with personality disorders change the way that they behave. And so you expecting or wanting them to be different is going to get you extremely frustrated and angry. So you have to understand that these are long-term patterns that have been there and will continue to be there no matter how long you wait or how different your relationship is. They are going to do the same things, whether it's to you or their children or to the new partner, that they've always done. And I have clients who, somebody has left them and then they've gone to another person and they're like, well, now they have a perfect life and everything looks so perfect. And I'm like, it may look that way, but so did your marriage look that way to the outside. Like they are definitely doing the same things to their new partner. They're doing the same things to your children. And like, there are ways that your children are going to be able to handle things differently because they're not married to them. They grow up and they leave and they have their own lives. So they're not going to be as impacted as you were. A lot of my clients are so worried about how, the other parent is going to hurt the children. And children really learn how to deal with the parent in a healthier way, because you can leave, you can't do that as a spouse. So, so once you understand what a personality disorder is and long-term patterns are, it doesn't necessarily have to be a personality disorder. It could be somebody who was traumatized from their childhood and they have never gone for help and never recovered from that trauma. And those people also will have a long-term pattern of behaving in a certain way. And no matter what you do, it's not going to change. So the sooner that you realize that you have to expect, you adjust your expectations so that you expect them to continue to act that way, then you won't get triggered as much, and you'll be able to be less emotional. You'll be able to take it less personally once you really just have to accept that this is who they are. They may still have some good points even if they're difficult as, a partner or an ex-partner, and those good points you focus on, you focus on the good points and you just ignore all the negative stuff as much as possible.
Yeah. And I think that's, that part about ignore the rest of the stuff, which is the hardest part for everybody to do. And when we're dealing with somebody with a mental disorder, I mean, I've had people in my families with bipolar. And so you have an issue with communicating with them. And then my son is on the spectrum, and then he's got ADHD on top of that. And so you really got to learn different ways to communicate to those kind of people. And something that you said, I am working with an organization where we're helping people divorce, but it's being major focused on the type of care that these parents are giving or not giving their children, and the children having mental health issues because of this. So we're working towards in the organization to try and teach the parents different things that they can do, or help the attorneys in some cases get the attorney to see how important it is that we get the child away from that other parent, so that we can show the courts what this is about without calling them narcissists in front of the judge. So these are huge and very important. Like I overheard a parent talking about, oh, I just want to leave my husband. I think I'm going to leave my kids and just go. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what would happen to those kids? So yeah, all of the stuff, we got to look at the whole big picture, and the way that we communicate as the one divorcing the narcissist, the way that we communicate about our narcissistic ex in front of our children.
Exactly, because you don't want to, alienate the children from the other parent if they can have a relationship and it be not abusive, because even narcissists can be good parents. It's amazing. Or high conflict people can be good parents. And what I always tell people is that, when you are with your partner and the children are in the home, they are around that person 100% of the time. But when you're divorcing and you've got only 1% of the custody, that child gets to be with you without that negativity for a certain percent of the time, which is very, safe and healthy. And then they can handle, the stuff that they're handling at the other house, unless it's abusive. Obviously, if the other parent is abusive, then you should try to get them away from that parent. But if they're not abusive, if they're just difficult and they still have good points to them and they're still a good parent, that child can really learn how to handle that and be okay being with that parent, and really benefits from having the two parents in their lives. So, a lot of parents that I work with are very concerned about, the child being impacted by the other parent, because they were really impacted by their, soon to be ex. And it's not the same relationship. Children have different things that they can do to protect themselves in that relationship.
Yes. And it would be important for the children to have a therapist too, so that the therapist can help the child know. I've got one other divorce coach that I was lucky enough to mentor that is the most amazing mom. The kids will come home and they'll be upset at dad, and so she'll sit there and ask them questions, and those questions kind of guide the child into seeing dad's behavior and to see that dad wasn't being that way to hurt them. So just kind of helping the child learn about the mental condition of their father.
Yeah, and helping children know how to set boundaries. I mean, a therapist can do it, but parents can do it too, where you let them know, if you feel that something's not okay, you can say, mommy, please don't say that, or daddy, I don't want to talk about that, and I always tell parents, tell children things like that about both parents. Like if either me or your father says something about the other parent, tell us that it's not okay. So you're giving them rules and you're giving them a structure on how to set healthy boundaries. And there's a lot parents can do to help their children navigate all of this, because it's a lot to navigate. But,
Yeah. I can remember as you're talking, I go back into my own divorce over 20 years ago, and my 16-year-old, my baby was 16 at that time, and actually through the course of this, he was 17, just a month away from turning 18. And he came to me and asked if he could move in with his girlfriend. Well, I really, at this point, know that I really don't have control of this child. Yes, he's living under my house, and yes, those are the rules, and he's following the rules. But I know if I upset him, he's a month from 18. He's going to go and live with the girlfriend anyway. So I gave him permission, but I said, but here are the rules, your grades, this, that, and the other. And we talked for a little bit, and he felt that I was kind of poking my nose in a little bit. So I says, okay, so if I'm going to give these rules to you, then what rules do I need to have to keep me in check where you feel that I'm crossing a boundary? He shared that with me, and we were able to work together, and he kept his grades up. Up to that point, he hadn't been keeping his grades up. So that part where you're communicating to the child about both parents, that really does make a major difference.
yeah, I mean, it's so, when you're going through divorce, it's so hard because you are negotiating with the other parent, but you don't think about the fact that, like, after the divorce is over, you're going to have to parent these kids, and kids in their teens do a lot of things to, step over boundaries and risky behavior, and you need each other, right? You need to be able to have a relationship. And, I went through a very high conflict divorce, and my youngest, when he was, I think he was like 16, he did something that was not good. I won't share that with everybody, but both his dad and I punished him. We sat down at one house and talked to him together. And we said, this punishment is going to go from both of our houses. Like it's going to be exactly the same at each house. It was 9 days. He had to come home right after school, except if he was working, and he had to be home by 8 o'clock. And he was basically grounded. And we were both on the same page. And it was so productive for my son, because he couldn't run to the other parent, and you're stronger together, especially when they're teens. So you're doing this being friendly, the BIF method, in order to lower the conflict in the divorce, but you also are lowering the conflict so that post-divorce you can work together for the good of your children. And so there's so many benefits to learning how to communicate in a productive way where the conflict is low. And attorneys don't understand this. The court system doesn't help with this. It's just something you have to really understand, that it's more important than getting, an extra $10,000 in your divorce, So it's really, you have to know what your priorities are. And one of them is, the mental health and the mental well-being of your family.
Yes. And we need to put the kids first. So I talked to somebody earlier about when I went through my divorce over 20 years ago. I was in such a mess from the abuse that was going on in my home. And I didn't have my shit together. I didn't have me together in my head. And because of that, I made some wrong choices. And I kind of put me first as opposed to my children. My children my oldest was right there. He was getting ready to go into the Navy, and my youngest was 16. So they were older, but that wasn't an excuse. So I make sure that when I'm working with my clients that we focus on the kids first. As a parenting coach, you put the kids first. And if you can do this because of the kids or for the kids, then everything else is kind of going to fall into place.
Right. But the problem is that the other parent may not agree in what putting the kids first means. And so, you really have to be able to, like for me, I knew that the schedule for the kids to go back and forth, he wanted a week on and week off. And I had done most of the parenting, and I knew my kids couldn't be okay without seeing me for a whole week. And it just wouldn't work. So I really wanted the 2-2-5, and I sacrificed financially to get the 2-2-5 for my kids, because I knew that that was going to be better for my kids. He thought, I don't know what he thought. He probably thought that I wanted it for myself or whatever, but I knew that I had to be involved with my kids every week to help them get organized and know what was going on, and just be there for them. A whole week without me would have been not good for my situation. So, everybody
Right.
has different things that is a priority. And when you're negotiating this and you're told to fight over something that's not really what's important for your family, then you're wasting a whole bunch of time and money and stress. And so, figuring out what's important is really, really important in this process.
Yes. Now, as a parenting coach, co-parenting coach, do you work with both parents, or do you just work with the one side?
So in my capacity as a therapist, I do co-parenting counseling. So that's working with both parents, and that's helping them communicate better, maybe talking about issues that they disagree with and coming up with solutions. I'm also a trained mediator. So, sometimes we do a little bit of mediation, but as a coach, I normally only work with one person, and I help them develop their strategy, and work with other professionals. And I occasionally I have worked with both, who are very amicable and want help from me, but most of the time it's just one person.
Yeah. And I, most of the time that's the way it is for me. I'm trained restoratively as a mediator and then as a facilitator. So I am trained to work with large families, not just the mom and dad, but those types of things. When we're dealing with the high conflict, as you well know, we can't always bring the narcissistic person to the table. They're not willing to work. So how do you deal with that?
That's a great question. And so you have to understand the legal process, which lawyers are very helpful for, to see what their alternative option is. And you have to be very straightforward, and mediators are great at doing this. And that's why I really encourage people to go to mediation, so that, the mediator can present the option. But it's basically, we can either talk about this here and come up with solutions and have control of what our agreement is going to say, or we're going to have to go through the court. And then we have no control. A judge can rule whatever they want, which we both may be unhappy about. But, when presented, and I always tell people, initially, the narcissist or the high conflict person may not be as cooperative in mediation or in the whole divorce process. But eventually, and I've seen this over and over and over again, they get that if I keep going and I go to court, it's going to be worse, and we're spending so much money and we're just throwing money away. So eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later, but some people take a really long time to get there. The 95% of divorces are settled out of court. So I had a client who they had their trial all scheduled. They went to the courtroom. They were sitting at the in front of the judge, and one party, the husband, went to her and said, "Can we talk outside?" And they went outside and they settled. I mean, that's ridiculous, and that's waiting way too long because you have to prepare for the court, so it's terrible. But eventually they get it. Most people get it sooner rather than later. That was just a very bad example.
Yes. And that's like wait till the last minute kind of thing. And
Right.
My late husband had a hell of a time. His ex wanted to go to court. She didn't care whether she won or not. It was all about just the drama and the problems and the everything.
And the attention.
Oh my gosh. And then she decided to fire her 7 lawyers. And so then she's being the mousy person, has her hair all down and kind of just playing the thing. She had told children earlier that she was going to go in, make her comment to the judge, and she was going to leave and go to the baseball game. And that's exactly what she did. She went in and just pouted and kind of did her little thing. I didn't know. And I just didn't know any of this. So I'm not ready and I'm not prepared. Sure enough, the actor aspect of her was able to get out and go to the baseball game. But that's what the narcissists, not all of them are high intelligent aspects and try to do that kind of stuff. A lot of them are just, it's a mental condition. In hers, it was beyond narcissism. And in most of them, it's just that mental condition does not allow them to think the same way that we do. And I have to teach my clients the same thing, that they don't think the way that you do. So you can't respond to them the way that you think you should respond to them.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you do have to go to court and you're a reasonable person, the court will probably end in your favor because they're being unreasonable. So, I mean, if you have to go to court, you do. But like I said, it's so rare that just, knowing that this is something that is a process that the other person has to understand, and hopefully not like the person you're talking about where they want to go to court, that eventually they're going to be willing to settle and settle on something out of court. But it's scary, it's scary to think about, threatening court if you have to do that. But I think it's not really threatening. It's really letting them know these are your options. This is our options, and nobody should want to go to court.
Like ever. That's the worst thing you can do, is go to court. It's the most expensive, and it's the least productive for you and your children. And so when a judge has to make those decisions for you, you're never going to like what the judge has to say. So it's just best to put your 2 cents in, and dealing with somebody like you, Jill, as a mediator, having the mediator step up and, help the 2 parties come to some kind of agreement. That's a huge thing. Huge.
Yeah, no, mediators are great. I highly recommend my coaching clients to use mediators. And, just because, the beginning doesn't go well, you still give it time and you go, you keep trying. And the other piece of that is you can, file in court for divorce, and then you can withdraw it, so like maybe they're not being reasonable. So you say, I'm going to file, you file, then the court process starts, and then they realize, oh no, I don't want to do this. And then you can withdraw it and you can go back to mediation. So there are a lot of tactics to use, and you really want to know when to use them and when not to. And
Right.
that's what I think we help people with, right?
Most definitely, most definitely. So as we start to wind this down, Jill, how can people get a hold of you? I know all your information is going to be in the show notes below us, but can you tell them verbally?
Yes, absolutely. So my website is divorcecoachjill.com. I have a free Facebook group for people going through divorce where it's a wonderful group. People are very supportive and you can ask tons of questions there. It's called Separation and Divorce Support Community. And I'm on Instagram at Divorce Coach Jill and on Facebook as Jill Kaufman.
So very good. And so if you were given one last bit of advice to our viewers, what would that be?
It would be that there is so much support out there for you as you go through divorce. You don't do this alone. Don't just hire an attorney and listen to the attorney. Get help from a divorce coach, from a therapist, there's a lot of other professionals that are out there, depending upon your circumstance, that are there to help you. So reach out. There's tons of resources now, much more than when I went through my divorce in 2012. And get support because it's one of the most difficult experiences anybody can go through.
And it is, and I so agree with you. And so I myself am a certified divorce coach, meaning that I'm trained in the divorce and its complexities. I specialize in high conflict divorce, especially that dealing with a toxic narcissistic partner. My late husband, my dad, and myself, we all went through that type of abuse. And so it's super important for me to do the work that I do. You can reach me through my email at coachtinalynn@gmail.com. That's coach, CoachTinalynn@gmail. And my website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. You can also find me on social media, Facebook at Tina Lynn Huggins, Huggins, LinkedIn under Tina Huggins, on Instagram under Divorce Coach Tina Lynn, and on TikTok under Divorce Tina. As with any situation, if you are involved in a domestic violence situation right now, call 911, or if you're in the UK, 999. Once the police get there, press charges. Those charges will help you as a key to get out of this. Don't ever drop the charges. What happens when you drop the charges could be way worse after you drop the charges than you've dealt with to this point. If you've been dealing with a domestic violence situation, please call the domestic violence hotline at 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. And if this has been helpful, please like, comment, and share this with others so that we can get the information out there to help them. And Jill, I have thoroughly enjoyed having you on the show tonight.
Thank you, Tina. I have too.
So is there anything else you want to add before we leave?
Just I love the work that we do, and I think that we need to get the word out there. So if you have a friend who's going through a high conflict divorce, if you have anybody who you know who's going through this, let them know about all these resources.
Yes, amen. And just because I get to work with Jill in the Divorce Coalition, she also is the co-host for that live show. Jill is an amazing coach. So if you are looking for an amazing coach, Jill is one of the ones you need to keep at the top of your list.
Thank you, Tina. That was very sweet.
You're so welcome. It's so true. Well, I appreciate you, and I wish everybody blessings, and we'll see you next time.